that he doesn't want a centre forward and that he wants this. Like, the words he's been using recently, like the one after the Newcastle home game, was the biggest one, I think, where he said, "I'm going to insist on it." Like, that was a really big statement. And I welcome that. Absolutely. I think I want to see more of that from him. He had a bit of a back and forth with James Ollie when talking about kind of the idea of signing a player, and he was like, "Do I need to be clear? Like, the statement is the same from January."
It was snappy.
Yeah, and I like that. I think that's good. You know, I want him to be that way inclined. You know, he's done that with me. You know, in the past. You know, I've gone back at him about certain questions later on. He kind of bit back when I was talking about Man United reaching, you know, 5 finals. Is it 5 finals, something like that?
5 finals in 6 years or something.
5 finals in 6 years. He was like, and I said about, is that people measuring that as success? And what's fair? And he said, success and failure aren't 2 words in my vocabulary. And a few weeks later, I went back at him about that. And I said, you said that success and failure isn't in your vocabulary. You know, do you feel that people looking at football in such a binary way is a worry? And he was like, yeah, I think it is, you know, and I think that he went and explained kind of further on that point. But yeah, I do really think that he's taken no prisoners, I think, this summer. And certainly I think if we get to the end of the window and we haven't landed the players that we know that we need, I don't think that's on him. And if anything, I'd be starting to worry about whether he thinks he's in the right place to achieve what he wants to achieve as a manager as well. So that becomes a concern in itself.
I'm quite bullish about the summer because naturally I tried, a bit like Arteta, I tried to be optimistic. I tried to be quite philosophical in how I look at things. I'm of the thing of, I don't want to forget last season. I don't want to look at it positively or negatively. I just genuinely want to look at it and take the good and make it great and take the obvious areas of improvement and keep it moving in that kind of regard. But then I look at it and I ask myself, like, am I putting too much faith in Berta? Like, for me, I'm not disrespecting Berta. It's just, I like what you did at Atletico Madrid. With the greatest of respect to Edu, it looks like you're several calibers above. Like, and I look at it, as much as he's good, can he really perform miracles, really? Because if it's an underwhelming summer again, people are going to kind of look at Berta. So am I putting too much eggs in the Berta basket without knowing anything, really?
No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of expectation. I've said this before. I don't think it's a free hit summer. I think you're coming in as an experienced sporting director.
Exactly.
And it's not like Edu, where he was learning to a degree on the job. You know the job. You know that you've got the contacts. You've done the deals. You've brought in some of the biggest players on earth. You've spent some of the biggest funds ever seen on individual players. I think it was Raul Felix, Atletico Madrid. You've done some of the biggest sales, as we've seen as well, Antoine Griezmann. He's experienced in some of the biggest deals that we've ever seen. So there's no build up, there's no warm up, there's just now, and he has to go and secure Arsenal the bag effectively and get them the players they need.
Simple as that, really and truly. And that's one thing I like what I'm seeing as well, based on reports, in that it feels like we've never had an ability to pivot. Now, obviously, you could caveat that with, you know, we wanted the Garcia lad from Espanyol, whether people like it or not. We got Neto. I mean, we was offered Sterling. Feels like that's been the theme, actually. Offered Ollie Watkins and offered Sterling. We did that. Based on what I'm seeing with Berta now, it's like we're tying up kind of several deals, and then we'll pull one trigger when we've reached a consensus or be able to pivot. So it'd be interesting. I mean, when you see the whole 200 million with no PSR issues and whatnot, I'm not saying the club's going to spend recklessly, but it's required. Do you buy any of the rumors with Partey going to Barcelona? And where are you at with the new deal for Thomas as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's realism in that, because he's out of contract in the summer. So clubs are going to be, you know, having conversations with representatives. There's going to be inquiries made. There's going to be offers. There's going to be discussions around what Partey is looking for. I think that Partey, his preference would be to remain at Arsenal, certainly for next season, but is going to want guarantees. And, you know, he's only had the same contract for the last 5 years. This would be his first renewal if he has one. So, you know, the terms would be discussed as well. There'd be expectation, I think, over those. Whereas other players, of course, have had renewals every couple of years and gone up as a result of that as well. And I think, you know, that's something to consider. I think that there are issues. I think that the injury side of things is something to be concerned about. This was an anomaly when it comes to a season for Partey with injuries. You know, pretty much every year we've had him, there's been problems, and he's a big earner. And the thing for Arsenal and Arteta is Arteta's been very outspoken. He said he wants to keep him. And if that's what the manager wants, if you fail to secure the player that the manager wants to keep, then does that look bad on the club potentially? It's a multifaceted issue. I think that from an Arsenal side of things, as I said, they want to keep him. If they don't keep him, then that will be seen as not achieving what they set out, or at least what the manager wanted to set out to do anyway.
Obviously, you're not the coach, but if Zubimendi comes in, like, who do you reckon's first choice? Do you think we see Rice continuing the 8 with Zubimendi, or what we see at the moment?
It's similar to the striker scenario of Havertz, isn't it? Like, because whoever we sign at centre forward, to me, the ones that we're talking about, Gyökeres and Šeško, for me, they're not significant upgrades on Kai Havertz at centre forwards. They're not like it's not like an Isak son who comes in, bang, you've got your guy. Either of those two I think, will be better in the long term over Havertz. I think Havertz gets a very rough ride from our supporters. You know, this is the guy.
It's not going to stop, Tom.
I know it's not going to stop, and you're going to get comments. Just me saying that will spark a response. But I think that similarly to that, Zubimendi will become the 6, and Šeško or Gyökeres will become the 9. But there's a chance if Partey stays that he does start out as our starting number 6, and gradually the season evolves and the squad evolves and the team changes. So, yeah.
I remember when me and you did a video a few years ago. I think the summer we signed Rice, Havertz, and all of them. I actually wanted Lavia. Now, I'm not saying we should go back in for Lavia as good as he is, but I felt that was the Partey replacement before he needed replacing. So that when you said that, that's what brought me back to that. The one thing I would say with Thomas is, like you mentioned, this season's been an anomaly. I thought back to the 2022-23 season where it was him and Granit. I think Partey's one of, I mean, every player, so I wouldn't call him weird, but he's one of those weird players that kind of needs to build up form and momentum and all those kind of things. I don't think he looks the same when he comes in and out of a team. So I don't know how it would pan out. I think we need to keep Partey. I think we need to keep the experience. I hope the Zubimendi thing goes through if it hasn't already, because midfield's a big area, and let's just keep it moving in that regard. So yeah, we've touched on Zubimendi, Šeško. It looks like that's going through. Who would you actually want out of Gyökeres and Šeško? Because I must admit, and it's quite annoying as football fans. Of course, you know, Šeško might not be the guy. And I understand with the crazy statistics you're seeing with Gyökeres and the frustration about, you know, the fact that Gyökeres is 26. We're trying to deliver now. It does feel like with our club, it's always about tomorrow. But people are talking about like Šeško, in my opinion, and I know he's raw and he probably starts a second choice. But for me, fair enough, you can be disappointed about Gyökeres. But people are behaving like Šeško is just some random lad in the pub that's just now going to play up front. Like, the guy can be very good if we polish him. But where are you at with it? Because both are risks. That's what people forget. Both are risks. You can spend all the money with Gyökeres and he still doesn't do the job. But where are you at with that?
Yeah, look, I lean slightly towards Šeško. I think Šeško is probably the smarter acquisition, the smarter investment of the two. I think that I think Gyökeres is the riskier addition out of the two. I think there is so many more question marks about Gyökeres and whether or not what he's doing can translate to Arsenal, because he's in a perfect situation for a centre forward. He plays in a league that has a lot of drawbacks in comparison to where he would be joining. I mean, he went from the Championship from scoring 22 goals to the Portuguese league for the team that, you know, the most dominant team in that league, being
the bullies of the league, really.
And as you know, immediately saw an improvement in his numbers immediately, but not by loads. You know, I think he finished the season with Coventry with 21 goals, I think it was, or 22 goals. I'm just going to double check those numbers. And when he moved in his first season to Sporting, I think he scored 29 league goals in his first season. Yeah, so he scored 21 for Coventry in 22-23, moved to Portugal, scored 8 more in the Portuguese league. Now, I think there are a lot of teams in the Championship that are better than a lot of the teams in the Portuguese league, personally.
Some of the defenders scary in the Portuguese league. Some of his goals.
Certainly. And then, obviously, this season, he's got 39 league goals in 33 games again for Sporting. So an improvement of 10 into his next season. So he's maintained that form. But people will quickly point out that a lot of those goals are penalties as well. So for Coventry, he scored 18 non-penalty goals in his last season. In his first season with Sporting, he scored 24 non-penalty goals. And then last season, even though he scored 10 more goals overall, he only scored 3 more non-penalty goals than he did the season before that, so 27. And then you start looking kind of at the finishing side. So I prefer to kind of look at when you're looking at bringing in a centre forwards, if they're bringing in decent numbers anyway, have a look at how they're outperforming their non-penalty XG, because that gives you a really good indication about their finishing ability, because they're going to get very similar chances playing for Arsenal. Whoever joins, it's not going to be that different. Yes, there's different movement and different abilities, but I think Šeško ironically suits Arsenal's system more than
presses well, drops deep. He's
Exactly.
the prototype for an
aerially. He's much more dominant.
Beast in the air as well.
Gyökeres, I think, has scored 4 headers in his 95 goals for Sporting. he's not aerially dominant like Šeško is. But yeah, looking at the numbers here, so 21.4 was the non-penalty XG. He scored 27 goals, so that is 5.6 when it comes to kind of outperforming his non-penalty XG. The season before that, his non-penalty XG was 18.7, and he scored 24, so 5.3 there. So very similar. So just around the fives. Šeško, in terms of what his non-penalty XG has been last season, and not the season just gone, the season before that, he had 7.7 non-penalty XG and scored 14 non-penalty goals. So 6.3 in terms of outperformance. This season, it did drop again. Well, not again.
The whole team's been poor, Leipzig, and he's been almost not second fiddle, but at the mercy of some teammates.
That's the other context to this. So it was 8.4 non-penalty XG. He scored 11 goals. So if you combine those, you're looking at 25 non-penalty XG across those 2 seasons. Goals that have scored without penalties. So 25 with a non-penalty XG rating of, and it's testing my math skills here, but 16.1. So he's outperformed it by, more than 8 across those 2. Whereas Gyökeres is not quite reaching those numbers. It's also good to point out the age difference between the 2, which is around 4 or 5 years. And if you actually look at kind of the player that everyone wants, me included, which is Alexander Isak, when Alexander Isak was performing at the similar age to Šeško was at Real Sociedad, Šeško's numbers are far more impressive than what Isak's were playing for Sociedad, a team that this season, Leipzig anyway, have not been creative. They rank well inside the bottom half of Bundesliga sides for shot creating.
It's been a poor season for them in all aspects.
All season. So for me, Šeško's the better choice, better investment. I don't think 93 million is quite accurate in terms of what it would cost Arsenal in terms of a transfer fee. I think it will be less than that. And I can see why he looks to be the preference. He's my preference as well.
I'm cool with either one of those, man. Like me and you have been talking about Šeško for years. I'm fully with the propaganda. I understand, if you just watch the highlights for Gyökeres and the frustrations around wanting to deliver now, why you would want someone like that. But there's risks. There's both have risks. Just because even if we went and bought Gyökeres does not mean I would hope he delivers, but it doesn't mean he's necessarily going to deliver, because the same people that are saying, show the ambition, spend all of that money, do this, do that, they're the first to say, how we bought a Portuguese league flop. The same is going to be said for Šeško. I think with Šeško, it's just a case of realizing that potential, man. We just polished that diamond. I think he's got it all. It'd be interesting to see how he rotates in and out with Kai Havertz. It'd be very interesting. And Arsenal have done their due diligence and homework. If we tried to buy Šeško last year and in January, we don't just, I know there's exceptions to the rule, but we're not just going to wake up a week before we made a bid, decide we want this guy. We've been looking at him for years. So it'd be interesting. I just want to forward in it. We need that front line. I must admit though, with Šeško, I do think it presses home the need of needing somebody on that left-hand side who's going to share a lot of the work rate in terms of goals and assists with Saka, kind of mimicking what Liverpool had when they had Mane, Salah, and what's his name again, Firmino. So it'd be very, very interesting. Last thing on that, before I ask you the last question, if I let you go, bro. Why do you think, well, I remember David Ornstein came out and said, Arsenal were looking at Gyökeres, Andrea Berta's a big fan of his. Yeah. Why do you think, obviously, we've never had a conversation with Berta, but why do you think Berta might have Gyökeres as his guy and Arteta might have Šeško as his guy?
I think that a lot's been made of this, around the whole one's got this guy, one's the other guy. And because that's all we get exposed to, really, as fans.
Yeah.
David is absolutely accurate in what he's reporting, as you would expect. David's probably, in my opinion, the best when it comes to reporting on transfers. And it's something Arsenal also have had an interest. I mean, if you go back to the summer of last year, I wrote a piece in around March, April time that it was my understanding that Arsenal were looking at Gyökeres going into that summer of 2024. Okay. So Arsenal's interest in Gyökeres long exceeds anywhere mention of Andrea Berta coming to Arsenal. So it's not like he's not been a player that has been on Arsenal's books. Šeško was the player that they landed on as the better market opportunity in 2024. Obviously, it didn't happen because of a number of factors, and that's persisted, and they've been impressed by the way in which he's fought against the adversity of Leipzig's season and still returned very solid numbers across the board, not just goal scoring, but in many other areas as well. And they see him just, signing Gyökeres, as we've mentioned. There's so many different kind of contexts to it. Andrea Berta, I think, has come from the perspective, of course, that he's the player that's scoring the most goals right now. He's coming from a club in Atletico Madrid that has a track record of looking at signing players that tend to have been high scorers elsewhere. João Felix, of course, they signed from the Portuguese league. There is a Portuguese influence with Jorge Mendes as well from Atletico Madrid side. So Berta's always had a very good line into what's going on in Portugal, basically. So he would have been very well aware and across of what Gyökeres is achieving. And as Arteta said, it's Andrea Berta's job to come in, to give his view, tweak plans, change plans, challenge what's happening. And we as Arsenal fans for a long time said that Edu was a bit of a pushover, really, that they aligned too much, that he didn't challenge. He's charismatic, very nice guy. I've got a lot of respect for the work that he did. But there was a lot of discussions around, was he challenging Arteta enough? And now Berta comes in, reports come out that he's like looking at maybe a different type of centre forward. And now it's, they're not aligned. This is a disaster. It's like, make your mind up, people. One moment you want Arteta to be, questioned.
Yes, all right.
We don't want a yes man coming in. Now we get this guy that's got different ideas and, this is not good. They're not aligned. It's like people, no matter what happens, there's complaints about what goes on. So, yeah, look, I'm not concerned by this in any way, shape or form.
That's what you want. You want people that shake the table. As long as egos are put before put after the collective. Who cares? You want different perspectives. And one thing I like about Berta is obviously he's immersing himself in Arsenal and whatnot, but he's a new perspective because we've been led to believe the club's been aligned for Šeško for a minute now. Obviously, if he's throwing a new line of thinking with Gyökeres, that might help us for another target. The only thing I would say with Šeško, I feel sorry for him, is I think most balanced Arsenal fans, going back to what you said about there's little balance when speaking about things, I think most neutral Arsenal fans or most thinkers, men and women that support our football club, they will give Šeško the time. They understand he's young, you got to adapt, you got to do this, you got to do that. I think where the frustration comes with, and it might filter through into Šeško, is that we're kind of in win now mode. We want to deliver right now kind of thing. And that's probably beyond the obvious why Gyökeres is probably seen to some as the more attractive buy. Finally then, man, is there any scope of us getting this lad Rodrigo, or is it just a dream selling?
Yeah, it's done, mate. I think he's staying. Certainly all the noise out of Spain is that he wants to stay at Madrid. New manager coming in, Xabi Alonso. It's a new manager to impress, new manager to get an opportunity under. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't think this is ever going to happen.
Nico Williams or Rafael, based on reports it is. But as long as we get a striker in the left winger and all the other stuff, and we actually can go into the summer feeling like, okay, cool, we've got the depth, we've got the quality, go and make it happen, lads, and we can celebrate something in May and we can have parades. Who cares, man? But yeah, it is what it is, man. And with that being said, Tom, it's always amazing being here with you. I don't know why, but I just feel better about my football club speaking with you. Nothing's changed. We ain't signed no one. We ain't won a trophy, but I feel a lot better about the team.